Learning question. How do Arthur Conan Doyle and Philip Pullman use narrative hooks? Sherlock Holmes and the Limehouse Horror is a play written by Philip Pullman, but it is based on stories created by Arthur Conan Doyle. Both writers are skilled at using narrative hooks. So what is a narrative hook? A narrative is another way of describing the process of a story. A narrative hook is a technique used in the opening of a story to catch and keep a reader's attention. An opening might be the first sentence, the first paragraph, or the first few pages. Narrative hooks can take the form of action, description, speech, humour, or mystery. Arthur Conan Doyle's stories always start with one sentence designed as a narrative hook. In A Scandal in Bohemia, he writes, "To Sherlock Holmes, she is always the woman." The reader realises this woman is going to become very important to Sherlock Holmes. But it is a mystery, and to get the answer, they need to read on. In The Red-Handed League, Conan Doyle uses a different technique. John Watson says, "I had called upon my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes one day in the autumn of last year, and found him in deep conversation with a very stout, florid-faced, elderly gentleman with fiery red hair." This long sentence gives us a detailed description of a character. The story, A Case of Identity, begins with Sherlock Holmes talking, combined with a description of him and Watson sitting in their two chairs, on either side of the fire in his lodgings at Baker Street. It is as though our favourite character is talking directly to us and we're invited into his room. This is where the first action in these stories often happens. Someone visits 221B Baker Street and the game is afoot. Philip Pullman is writing a play, so he uses action and staging as narrative hooks. He describes what will be seen on the stage, a winter evening in Holmes's sitting room in Baker Street. The stage set makes the audience feel like they are inside Holmes's lodgings. The next narrative hook Pullman uses is action. The landing door flies open and Sherlock Holmes enters. Then Holmes shouts, "Mrs. Hudson!" Immediately, the audience feels a sense of urgency and we hear the name of Holmes's housekeeper. The actor describes his vital experiment and we recognise a familiar Sherlock Holmes characteristic. Philip Pullman suggests mystery when he has Holmes talk about darkness, the curtains, and then mention unusual sounds. But then Mrs. Hudson says, "I'm not having no explosions." This tells the audience that the tone of the story is going to be humorous. And then a man enters the room and fires a gun. So, both Arthur Conan Doyle and Philip Pullman use action, description, speech, humour and mystery as narrative hooks. For your checkpoint task, you are asked to write one pearl on how the playwright uses narrative hooks to engage the audience. You might like to think about what questions you need to ask before we start the task. Thank you for listening.